Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
We are back with Dillon Leonard. Dillon is a 5-year firefighter. He's a third-generation Louisville firefighter. Him and I have talked for the last couple of months. He got into his hustling endeavor in his high school years when he was flipping. He started flipping cars. He was flipping houses. He has owned his own detailing business. He's gotten into small businesses outside of that. He's done residential for multifamily. He's done wholesaling, and now his niche is self-storage. So I've got a lot of questions. I know Mike and Tyler do too. So without further ado, this is Dillon Leonard on podcast number 9. Dillon, what's up, bro?
Hey guys, I appreciate you guys having me. It's exciting to get with a group of other first responders and kind of share the good gospel of financial freedom.
That sounds very practiced. That was good. I like that.
I just came up with that completely, but I'm glad it came out like smooth. I was a little bit afraid about that.
That was smooth, bro. I appreciate it.
Good deal.
So I've been singing your praises. I think I brought you up in the last 2 podcasts or 2 of the last podcasts about like a young guy hustling hard. You had this entrepreneurial spirit since you started, and then you like teaching people about this stuff. So tell me how, like, from your high school years to now, what kind of led you up to where you are in self-storage now?
Oh, absolutely. So kind of what you said, I mean, it summarized a lot of it. So, growing up, my family, my background, I am a third-generation Louisville firefighter. My grandfather, I was telling the guys, actually, when he came back from Vietnam, wanted to be a cop, but he was too short. So they ended up allowing him to be a firefighter at the time. He had to be 6 foot, and 5'3" didn't cut it. So he ended up in the fire service. My dad and his brother chased him into it. My uncle, who's still on, my dad's on a different department now, but retired from Louisville. I've been on about 5 years, and then my brother is also on about 3 years now. So on the other side of the family, my mom, my grandmother's always kind of been my hero in a way. She had a florist, business on Dixie Highway. So there was a small business that my parents operated on that side. So, growing up, it was between the firehouse and small business. And that's essentially what I do today. I kind of developed a passion for both of them. Grew up in like a lot of programs like scouts and stuff, a lot of brotherhood and team building things. So, I really like that aspect of the fire department. In high school, like you said, I started a detailing business when I was about 16, more or less. Didn't really want to work for anybody, a little bit of flexibility in my schedule, needed gas money. So, I started detailing cars, and then I went to school for about 1 semester, actually, at U of L to take and be a financial advisor, and discovered I didn't really want to charge people money to teach them how to handle their finances. I felt like we could sit down and talk about stocks, and in about 10 minutes, I could set up a plan that would work for them their entire life. And I didn't feel right collecting 1% to 2% of that for the rest of their natural born life. So, I did a little bit of that kind of stuff. I got on the department October 2016, a couple little business in between. I started flipping cars. I did about 18 cars about my first year. I'd take them in the firehouse after 8 o'clock, of course, wink, wink, and take and clean them up, get them shined up and list them on Craigslist the next day. And I always sold them over the weekend. Cheap cars, $5,000 or less. I built up about a nest egg of about $25,000. I bought my first rental property about an hour away from home, which at the time seemed like a great idea, in Frankfort, Kentucky. And I bought it cash. I sweat bullets over it for about 2 months because I didn't know anything about renovations. Decided to sell it. And when I sold it, I made about $5,000, which at the time I was like, wow, this is incredible. I held this property that I was freaking out about for 2 months and made $5,000. So kind of went down the rabbit hole of wholesale for a little while. I did that for about 2 or 3 years, about 35 transactions or so, more or less, kind of building up more nest eggs. Got really heavy into trying to find owner financing deals. I had 2 fourplexes in Louisville that were both owner financing deals. One of them was a contract for deed, which kind of went a little sideways. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other one was a really good deal. I convinced this guy to sell me a fourplex that was half renovated for $80,000, 3%. He financed the entire thing and gave me $10,000 to fix up the property. So I didn't have anything in this property, and I sold it. I had 95, I think, in it. Sold this last January for about 230. So we took that money, and set it into a 1031 account. I'm looking at a couple properties right now. I had the other fourplex. We'll get back into that. I had a fire that burnt it up in February 2021. A tenant pushed the couch up against the heater. One of my firefighters called me. He's like, "Hey, you own a property over on Portland Avenue?" Yeah. I'm like, "Hey, which one is it?" And he's like, "Well, we're at, this address. It's on fire. It's pretty gone." So drove down there, middle of an ice storm, standing out in front of it. And I started thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I love real estate. I love this idea, but I don't want to own anything that people live in anymore. And just that day, got on Facebook, posted, "Hey, who of my friends do anything in commercial or self-storage? I really want to talk to you." I met with a guy about three days after that. His name's Eric George. Him and his partner, Jay Bowman, own a lot of property down here. But anyway, got into self-storage, bought my first one July of 2021. Off market, everything I've ever done is off market. That same year in February, my wife was in healthcare, with the pandemic. She was kind of stressed out, burnt out, and came from a family that was highly educated. Never really went the entrepreneurial route, something that interested them, but never really went that way. I encouraged her in February to start an online boutique, which is something she always did or wanted to do. I thought it was a great thing for me. She'd be buying and selling clothes and making money instead of just buying clothes and keeping them. It kind of scratched that shopping, niche that she wanted to. So she's been doing awesome with that. We just opened an actual physical store, which I don't think I told you that, Aaron, March of this year. So that's been going really good. So now we've got the shop, a retail shop that, I help her a lot with, more or less just kind of the renovations and that kind of thing. She's got it running now. And then we've got the one storage facility in Carrollton, Kentucky. I'm currently negotiating on a couple across mainly Kentucky and Southern Indiana. At one point, I was looking the entire Southeast, which, we'll still look. But, I went to Florida twice, West Virginia, Georgia, Alabama. I've looked at about 6 facilities in the last 4 months. And just the more and more I kind of looked, I was spending a lot of time looking out of state. They were good assets, but, needed a lot of repairs. I didn't have the bandwidth to knock them down. And with lending tightening up, I've kind of decided to retreat to about 125 miles of my home at this time. So I've kind of was trying to go the big, national approach, but I kind of realized I'm a grassroots guy. I like investing in my backyard. I don't have to see him every day, but I know that if my lawn maintenance guy disappears or gets abducted by aliens, I can handle it. So that's where we are now. We sold off all the multifamily, all the little single families we're in. And I'm not a huge high volume investor. Everything I've ever done has been good deals. The fourplexes I had were both 20 caps, which are incredible. That's what I've always done is low volume, high value, more or less. So that's what we're doing right now. We're sitting on a little bit of money, trying to park in another storage facility. And I've got a couple other little projects that are in that realm. I'm kind of kicking around.
All right. So you've already bought and sold about 25 properties, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, about 35, I think, total I've been involved in transactions. Me, myself, I've bought and sold probably on the wholesale side between 20 and 25 properties. And then I've kind of done, for lack of a better term, some coaching, just been involved with some other projects, more or less helping other firefighters buy or sell. But I never charge them like any kind of fees or equity. I tell them, hey, man, this is your first deal. When you get that $1 million deal you need a partner on, give me a call, then we'll square up then.
I think all 4 of us are the same way in that sense. It's kind of like help the right out, and eventually karma will come back and help you out. So
absolutely.
Are you done with all residential and now you're just on commercial?
Yes, I am. With that being said, every now and then I get shiny object syndrome. I see these nice buildings. A lot of the buildings in Louisville that I was investing in were 1800s and, those kind of buildings that have beautiful architecture. I love architecture, but it's been kind of one of those things that I've grown to more or less invest in what was easy and made sense to me, what I really enjoy, which is kind of the storage realm, and I can still appreciate it, but I'm staying out for the time being. I might eventually get into maybe a flip or two, but I'm all about cash flow. For me, if it's going to be worth a time investment, it needs to be something that's going to serve me for a long time, not just those short bumps.
Yeah, I understand, man. Like I every day I'm like residential. I'm like, how can I get out of this? Like, what's the next step? I've asked you a couple of times, like, teach me your ways, young guru. Like you got to show us what we're missing out on. Like, it's just one of those things. It's if you don't know what you don't know, the questions to ask. Like me, Mike, and Tyler were talking yesterday about different deals that Ian had sent me, and I was like, well, we don't know what we're doing. It's just ready, fire, aim. Is that what we're doing? Yeah, just like buy and figure it out. Like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I did it on the first one. To be honest, I got to this point with commercial and stuff. I was like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I was so burnt out on the residential stuff just from either bad tenants or bad experiences there, And I just decided I was like, I'm going to go into the commercial route. I've always been very business oriented, and I realized that was my big downfall really in the residential side, because you can have a level of customer service, but you can't extend it too far because they'll take advantage of that. Tenants will take advantage of your kindness. So that's kind of why I decided to go the business route. There's a higher level of customer service I'm able to provide. I'm a tinkerer. So like in businesses, I love that you can add and change little things, and it increases the value of, the asset exponentially versus using comps. Like, you wouldn't imagine on the storage facility we have, one of the things we use a product called a Da Vinci lock. It's a 4-digit combination lock that whenever we clean out a unit, we lock over the unit with it to make sure that nobody dumps stuff in the unit, because people do that all the time. I buy these locks for $15 a piece. And I thought one day, I was like, what if instead of every time that somebody moves in, they throw the lock in the box, what if I offered it to them to rent it for $5 a month? And you wouldn't believe it. These half of our tenants rent a $15 lock for $5 a month. I just recently started it's incredible. And one other thing I did is our front fence line, we face a highway. So I was thinking the other day, I passed a ball field. And I was like, I wonder if I could put like 4x8 banners across the front of this and rent them out for like $50, $75 a month to small businesses for advertising. And sure enough, we just started doing that too. So I'm going to make about another $1,000 a month off of my front fence line that before was just sitting there, doing nothing. And I like businesses where you can be creative. One of my little sayings is that opportunity grows where creativity flows. I like it. So that's one of the things I try to do, is kind of tweak things and always find ways to add value.
It's official, man. I'm adopting you as my little unofficial brother.
Yeah, I like it. So I'm in.
So Dillon, you're. I think we can all probably relate to eventually you start looking at what's the next step, and I think we're all at that phase with residential real estate where it's served us well. We're very happy with it, and frankly, I'm still heavily invested in it, but kind of looking to see what's going to get us to that next level or that next step, right? Yeah. So you've transitioned to pretty much simple. I see your company's name is Simply Stored.
Yeah, Simply Stored. We have like a parent company, Passive Income LLC. I made it very simple. I've got Active Income LLC and Passive Income LLC, and our Simply Stored is our storage brand.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
I like it. It's simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. So on that note, you have how many self-storage facilities right now?
So I've only got one that we actually purchased. We're in the process of acquiring another one. We've been looking at a bunch of other ones. And now I've got one project that we're kind of working on that's kind of a top secret kind of thing we're working on. That's I'm testing the market on. I ended up coming across this concept a couple of months back that I'm trying out, but it's in the storage realm. It's more of a form of land banking. It's something, I've kind of been testing with, because storage originally, it's not an old industry. It was actually invented mainly for corporations to bank large parcels of what would be commercial land worth a lot of money in the future, and then tear it down and sell off that land. So I'm kind of going back to the roots kind of with that policy or that kind of thing there. So I've still done a little bit of wholesale on the storage side. It's a lot more complicated just because the assets are underwrote so much differently than a house. On wholesale on houses, I can take and send somebody an address and be like, hey, this is what we're looking to get for it. And they know the area and they'll, can jump into it right then. So, there's nothing against residential. It's a great industry, and I make good money in that. But for me, as I pivoted, I tried to build more of a lifestyle brand, I guess. My business kind of revolves around kind of the type of lifestyle I want to live now, even if it's not as high volume versus, doing as many deals. Like our one storage facility we bought, I bought way below replacement cost, $23 a square foot. I think construction today is right around $65. So, we bought it, pennies on a dollar, what it would actually cost to build the thing.
So on that, when you have the one facility now,
yeah.
The average question you get is like, how many rentals do you have? So with self-storage and commercial as a whole, I know a lot of people talk about it as square feet. So how do your self-storage facility, how many spots, how many square feet, and how do you kind of determine? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people want to say that storage is not evaluated on a cap rate. I mean, from the purchase price to me, there's a cap rate I try to hit. Our storage facilities right about 12,000 square foot, and that's just I only count physical buildings. I don't count land necessarily because land can always be shifting and changing. So we've got some parking spaces and stuff we use too. But this little facility that I bought, I mean, I bought it for steel. It's what I would consider a Class B facility. It's gated, automated gate, but it's gravel and it's a wood frame. If it was steel framed and, actually like, what do you want to call it, paved, I'd consider that along the lines of like an A class. But I mean, when we bought this thing, they were charging $40 a door for a 10 by 12. So I technically have 96 units, 3 parking spaces, and then 18 banners. So right around 120, 125 spots per se. And I mean, you can collect multiple streams of revenue for each one of those spots between, lock rentals or, special services that are, I mean, there's a lot of things you can add.
Let's add on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, kind of why I like that. But I mean, we bought it $40 a door. Today, we bumped up the rates. Our street rate's about 95 a door. So, I mean, we went from, we bought it for about 300,000 at the time. It was probably worth $5. It's worth just under $1 million. So, I mean, in a year's time, actually,
that was a year.
Yeah, less than a year. I've created about 600,000 worth of equity in this property. Ooh. Yeah.
And so, okay, I could just.
Yeah.
I'm looking at airfare to Louisville right now. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, it got a lot in Louisville. That's why I've been, kind of looking around and everything all over the place. But I mean, that's what I like about the business side of it is it's so easy to create value. They say rich people, they create money. They don't find money. I mean, that's what's incredible about storage and commercial assets is that the way you treat the asset, the way you run the business is what it's worth.
Let me ask you a question. So we talked add value for residential real estate is going to be different than add value for storage. So me, Mike, and Tyler were texting each other yesterday, and we're talking about different add values. So we had one put up down the street from where I live at, and he did a car wash, automated storage facility. He does ATMs. He's got snack machines, automated bathrooms. The only way you can get in the bathroom is you buy something from the snack machine that gives you a code to punch into the door to use the bathroom. So there's nobody on site. Everything is automated, 100%. What other things can you do to What other things can you do to automate and add value to your storage facilities? Like, what other things can you come up with or have you done?
I mean, it's really, it's limited your creativity. I'll tell you what I've done and some things that I think you could do. One of the things, like I said, is lock rentals. We do lock rentals, which, I mean, it's $5 a unit, but I mean, it adds up over across 100 units. Another thing that we do is we offer insurance. Insurance is actually through our storage provider. Like we use a platform and they offer it through there, but we get 40% of the revenues that are collected off that. So by just adding a link to our website, we get 40% of the revenues from the insurance that are on there. Some storage units, I mean, like per se, like boat and RV, you can charge for use of power. I know people that actually will have security cameras that they use, but will charge for use of the security cameras to see the security cameras. One thing I considered I haven't really gotten into is that when people move in, asking them on the sign up, do you want boxes and tape? And if they do, they can pay a premium and we can drop it off, into their unit. That's one thing that we've considered on that kind of standpoint too. So, I mean, there's a lot of creative things, like I was saying with the banners out front. To my knowledge, and this is something I hope a lot of people will do. So hopefully, that it will catch on per se. I haven't seen anybody else that's renting advertisement space on their storage units yet. But I mean, every kid, soccer or ball field's doing it. So I don't see why we couldn't do it for an affordable rate too.
I think it's great.
My son's team was hustling me for that this year.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So Dillon, you said this is how far from you?
So this one, it's in Carrollton. I live in LaGrange, is right outside of Louisville. So about on the highway, about 35-minute drive or so. I try to invest in 125 miles or 2 hours of home currently is kind of what we're looking at.
So a lot of the day-to-day things that come up, are you handling that, or do you have somebody that's more local than you?
Oh, yeah. So that's one of the most, the beautiful thing about whenever we first implemented it. My last property manager, I wasn't necessarily a fan of the way they handled kind of the property. So we decided that we were going to self-manage everything. Property managers are great. That just depends on how hands-on you want to be. And nobody's ever going to treat your, investment the way you are. So we decided to self-manage, so we use a platform that processes all our credit cards, does all of our charging, that kind of thing. When we first took over the facility, all the rents were due on different days of the month. If you rented a unit on the 25th, your rent was due on the 25th. which if you look at your big players, your public stores, stuff like that, people don't do that. So we rolled all the rates to be due on the 1st. They're late on the 6th, overlock on the 16th. So I have a maintenance man that I pay to do it for us. He cuts our grass. We use kind of a 2-touch system. I use 2 people, a grounds manager and a site manager. And the site manager does your things like your overlocks, checking on units. Your ground manager is the guy who kind of does your baits the rodent boxes, cuts the grass, pulls the weeds, that kind of stuff. But now that we've rolled the payment structure onto kind of the 6th and the 16th, I only have him go to the facility physically on the 6th, the 16th, and the 26th. So my touch on this property, now that we've got it set up, I've got about a 90-day turnaround window, more or less, to get the facility running. I probably put, I'd say, about 10 hours a month into this, and he's probably right around 8. So, 20 hours a month to run the facility.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just to clarify, is overlocking like somebody doesn't pay their rent, you put your lock over top of theirs?
Correct. Yeah, and that's one of the advantage of the product I was talking about, the Da Vinci lock. Traditionally, with storage on after 15 days, and each state's different, you can overlock the unit, and at that point, they can no longer access the unit itself, so they have to call you pretty much to settle up in order to regain access to that unit. The old school way was it was overlocked with a key, and then you would have to have your maintenance guy, go to put on the lock and then go there to remove the lock once they were paid up. But with this product, we use this Da Vinci lock. It's a 4-digit combination code. So we throw the lock on there. Once they pay up, we text them the code, and they took that lock off. So it actually cut our labor in half using just a special product.
That's awesome. So obviously with the pandemic, the last 2 years, somebody doesn't pay their rent with self-storage, it's treated completely different than if somebody doesn't pay their rent for a house. So you can lock them out, which I think you should still be able to do with houses, but we won't get into that. I'm only partially kidding for all of you. Never mind. But seriously, like you said, like basically the catalyst for this was sitting there watching one of your places burn, which I've had the good fortune to receive pictures of my apartment on fire too. So I was definitely thinking that at that time, like, man, so you don't have to deal with the people as much, but would you say that this is more of a customer service intensive business than, say, residential real estate, like a rental property?
Definitely. And you'll hear this argument a lot. A lot of people want to say that storage is a completely passive asset, which it's not. It's a business with a real estate aspect. But I think that's a beautiful concept, because not only are you increasing the value of the business through the business aspect, but it has an underlying real estate asset. And if you look at, business owners over time, a lot of people who own mom and pops or floor shops or bakeries or whatever, when they retire, their money, what they actually retire on, is selling that business that they paid off over 25 years. It's not necessarily selling the business itself. So, I think that businesses that have an underlying real estate asset, are the best you can get on. I would say anybody who, even has a service business, if they can build or buy the building that they're working out of or anything like that, always try to own the real estate, because, it's only going to appreciate, hopefully, from what we've seen. Hopefully you can refinance, lock in rates, you can pull capital out of the property if you need to. But any business that has an underlying real estate asset, I think, is probably one of the safest or the best things you can get involved in.
It's like McDonald's.
I got a question for you about
money for you.
So we say, Tyler?
I would say that's like McDonald's business plan is McDonald's owns a ton of
Absolutely.
real estate. Everybody always assumes it's the business, but McDonald's is extremely wealthy because of the real estate itself.
And that's the exact concept that I'm looking kind of to explore as we move forward. I'm looking to buy a lot more land, even if we only develop 10 to 20 acres or 10 to 20% of the actual land. Kind of my concept moving forward is I actually want to be a big, like a land bank that offers self-storage. That's kind of what I'm looking to do, is in certain metropolitans and areas that are on the verge of development. Because just like Ray Kroc or Sam Walton, who invented Walmart, he would, before Google Maps, fly over large areas of real estate and see where the city was developing and chase that direction. So that's kind of my plan moving forward, is to try to buy large tracts of land that would be zoned right, in these areas. Even if I only use 10 to 20% of it, hopefully the asset will cover it, and on the exit 20, 30 years down the road, that land, should hopefully be worth a lot.
So I've got a question for you about like boat and RV storage, because there's a place, it's a 4-season resort by us in Maryland, and you cannot have any boat storage in the watershed, but it's too hilly and mountainy to put boats anywhere else. Like, have you ever looked at doing like that kind of storage instead of the not brick and mortar, but the roll up doors or whatever you're doing?
That's something I've looked at, was kind of doing a boat and RV kind of thing. When you go price per square foot, as far as how much rent you're charging per square foot, obviously it's going to be lesser on boat and RV because, they're larger spaces. But with that being said, too, I would say that your building cost is probably 60 to 70% of what it would cost to take and put up 4 walls. And if you just take and gate and gravel an entire lot, it's going to be significantly less too. But one of the things to think about boat and RV, it's something that I've considered but haven't personally got into yet. And I'm kind of exploring that model. Is that you have to think about your tenant base, just kind of like with certain neighborhoods or residential housing. Your tenant base will be kind of dependent on the product in a lot of ways. So like with boat and RV, regular storage, you might have somebody who just got evicted. They need a storage unit today because they don't know where they're going to put their stuff while they're finding their next place. Boat and RV, you're dealing with typically a luxury type client that has, obviously the money to buy these larger luxuries. So a lot of the times with boat and RV, for one, it's a safer asset because of your client base. But two, a lot of them charge on a quarterly, biannually, or a yearly basis. So you might actually only run the business twice a year outside of, paying somebody to take and spray the weeds.
It sounds like a great idea. So how about, so Tyler, I don't know if you do, this, but Tyler does underwriting and he does mortgages. So it seems like the mortgages, we touched on this already, is the mortgage is a little bit different for commercial than it is for residential. So what obstacles have you faced for underwriting these deals?
Storage, it's kind of become like a hot button topic, kind of over the years. So a lot of banks are lending on it now that weren't before, because before it was almost in the same class of like mobile home parks. The underlying asset was really the property itself. They didn't really see any value to the business. As I've kind of been going, that's another reason I've kind of pulled back to my local markets, because I work with 3 really good banks here that know what I'm doing and know the asset, and they'll lend on storage all day. Outside of my local market, it's kind of tightened up, and a lot of that has to do with the way that the I guess financial landscape is right now. At least from what I've seen, to me, in a way, it's like buying a business, which businesses are harder to underwrite because you have to prove that the value is there in the business itself. But getting back to what I said about the underlying asset, the land in the business itself is worth something. So I try to buy under replacement costs even. So, even the storage facility that I bought at $65 a square foot and probably $50,000 to $100,000 an acre, of replacement costs, we were still buying it for half of what it would cost to build for an operating business. So I think that's another play as you're looking for value add, facilities. You can get into new construction. It's just going to be a little bit tighter, but kind of the same thing. You're looking for value add opportunities. It's kind of the old adage, that if it's a good enough deal, you'll find the money. Banks want to lend on these things. They're safe, but they're not recession proof, but resistant. The beautiful thing about storage is when the economy's going great, people are buying all kinds of junk. So they have to have a place to store their junk or their old stuff. When the economy's bad and they're downsizing, they have to have a place to store stuff. And then to be morbid, when grandma and grandpa or mom and dad pass, they got to have a place to put all those family memories. So, it's one of those things that's constantly in demand. It's in demand more now than probably in the last 10 or 20 years. So I'm kind of getting into this in the golden age, from what I can see historically. It could go either way, but I don't see how, I don't see anything on the initial or the coming future that's going to hurt storage necessarily.
So when you obtained financing for the storage facility that you have now, did you go to a traditional bank? Did you go through a broker? And what type of requirements do they place on you in order to obtain that financing?
Yeah, so I've talked with some brokers. There's a lot of brokers in the SBA space right now. I personally, just because of limitations, the way that we're doing these properties with them being value add, we're looking to add value and then harvest value in a 2, 3, 5 year period. I've mainly been dealing with just banks that are local credit unions or local banks. That's what I kind of look for, is banks that are smaller and serve a geographic niche kind of area. And they seem kind of to be more prone to invest or want to invest in local businesses, businesses that are in their backyard. They're in a way kind of backyard investors too. That's kind of what I focus on. When we underwrite the asset from a banking standpoint, they want to see, cash flow that's going to cover at least usually 1.25 to 1.5 of the loan payments. That's the kind of the underwriting minimum that they want. But like the one that I end up buying in Carrollton, our cash on cash return on that, I think, is about 120% year one. I mean, I've more than made my money back on that one already. So, I mean, a lot of it's the asset, I mean, if you have a strong asset or you can show that you can add value, which one of my things I try to do, I always try to go the extra mile. When I go to a bank, I want to have an entire folder of documents, projections, history about me with my smiling face, more or less, that I drop in their lap and say, hey, I've done the work for you. Here's how this is going to go. And I've done it. What do you think? And I mean, it tends to work, at least in my local market. Outside of here, whenever I call from a Kentucky number to Florida or Georgia, they think I'm a transplant moving to the area, and they kind of tense up a little bit. But it's a little easier here in my backyard.
And then the 1.25 that you mentioned is a debt service coverage ratio, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay. And we've been talking about that on previous episodes, and that's originated mostly with commercial, and then now residential is taking that same model and allowing investors to use it for their investor properties. And then real quick, I'll let Mike jump in after this, but what you mentioned earlier is also different. Mostly we've talked about residential, where you basically gain value on your property through appreciation. You mentioned earlier, you're actually gaining value on the actual business itself, which is multiplied by a cap rate, which allows you to force your appreciation, which is awesome. You have a lot more control, and not totally, but irrespective of what's happening in the market in general, as long as your business is producing, you can hit a 5x, a 10x, because you're operating an efficient business without any debt.
Definitely. And, I mean, to add on to that too, I like to, automate and delegate kind of the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss model. I mean, I use local contractors to run our business, but if for some reason we got into a tight pinch where, more or less we couldn't afford to pay them, I could run the business. I could run it on my off days, and that would save me a whole lot there. So, I mean, worst case, if we get in a bad financial situation, just the market changes or something along those lines, I mean, it would have to be a significant change the way we're adding value to these properties. I could take over that aspect, and we would bare minimum break even. I mean, at the rates we're currently getting off the storage facility, I could probably go down to, I'd say, about 20% occupancy and still be covering our payments.
Good luck doing that in residential rentals.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Your rent's $1,000. The market's tough. I'll charge you $200 and I'm still making my bills. I doubt it very, very much.
Oh, definitely.
So I want to just kind of highlight something that you just mentioned about what we call the banking Bible. So you took all your experience, and for those folks that don't have any experience, they can still put together a little bit about them in a nice little packet. And I mean, I called probably 15 banks when I was first getting started, and the one I got started with did not have the best rates, did not have the best product for what I was doing, but I had a relationship with them because that's who I had my very first mortgage through. So it got me kind of started. But whenever we were looking to get into that next level, we wholesaled these, we flipped these. Here's a picture of me. Here's a picture of the family. Here's a little bit about me, and just took it and put it in a little spiral bound notebook and dropped it off. And not the first bank, but one of the first banks we went to, my business partner and I showed up. We had our Carhartt coats on with our logo. And he's like, he didn't even look at the thing. He's like, this is great. Yeah. What do you guys want? Cause he could tell, cause he probably gets 15 people a week calling and saying, hey, I want to get into real estate. And how many times can you hear that story? But if somebody takes the time and effort to put a little work into it, I mean, it was a total game changer. Actually, the 2 refis I have today, that's who it's with. And it all started from something that simple. So just wanted to highlight that because you kind of breezed over it, but it is imperative to build that relationship with a local banker, in my opinion. So.
Oh, absolutely. And kind of one of the reasons that I think I breezed over that is because for me, that's just common sense, not to be arrogant about it. I mean, the way I've kind of run.
How long you been in the fire service?
Oh yeah.
Common sense, man.
Years. Yeah. Yeah. I've got a little bit up here.
Stupid human tricks, man. They do them every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even was it a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, or shocks himself, he figures it out, I guess, but I mean, that's the thing is, when I first started off in kind of the residential space, a lot of the reason too I got out of that is because it became so cutthroat. As far as just trying to find deals, I didn't really like that. And for a little while, I was just shotgunning people, just calling them, just, hey, do you want to sell? No, okay, click. And I realized that a lot of these people that I follow up with years later are the ones who want to sell. So I've been kind of restructuring my business from a relationship model. And like you were saying with local banks and credit unions, I recommend, like, when I need a loan, I write down every local bank or credit union that's there, and I call 30, 40 banks, whatever it is, I put it in a big spreadsheet. And then, the banks that serve the largest geographic area with the best terms, I'll try to develop some sort of relationship with them, whether that's, just checking with the bankers, calling them every now and then to just get rates, or, establishing small accounts. Like, I've got multiple small accounts that are with banks that are, just small savings accounts. Stuff like that, which doesn't really amount to anything, necessarily to you. You just kind of set the money there, maybe $500 or something, there and there, more or less to establish these accounts. But when they look at your profile, they're like, well, you've been in business with us or done business with us for 5 years. It's just what they're looking at in their CRMs. So, developing those kinds of relationships, I think defining, really, for me, being a backyard kind of investor, defining your geographic area and finding who your biggest players in that area are and your best players in that area, and then developing relationships with them is really kind of the key to success in this field.
I think that's 100% accurate. So one of the things I want to talk about is after 08. So I don't know who was in the market in 08, but back in 08, I was looking at, okay, what asset classes are making the most money? And it seems like during a downturn in the market in 08, they made a 20% growth phase in that sort of small time frame, because as people were getting evicted or downsizing, they are actually putting stuff into storage. So as the population grows, they're having the same thing going on right now. Whereas during times of growth is when people need to have space and storage or moving. And because there's so much moving parts right now, it seems like there's a lot of growth phase in these storage facilities, and it hasn't slowed down. So have you looked into leveraging this, since you already made $600,000 in forced depreciation? Can you leverage this and then go buy that? I see you smirking over there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's one of
I'm
my
smirking,
ideas.
man. A year?
Yeah.
A year.
I'm a creative kind of investor. That's the thing, is I'm looking for things that add value like this. And then I talk with my bankers often about strategies like this, either refinancing or a lot of, two of my lenders will let me cross collateralize with that property. So, that way we're not necessarily pulling the equity out. We're just kind of betting it all on that, which I'm fine with, because I feel good about the asset. And like you said, there's been a lot of growth. To me, the biggest threat to self-storage is self-storage. If people overbuild the market. So there needs to be kind of a community around the asset, just like there is in, certain networks for residential. But with that being said, we're seeing that we're becoming a renter nation. A lot of people are owning less and buying more. So, in these big metropolitans, your population continues to get denser, and there's more apartments being built, and people are living in smaller spaces because of the economy. So with that being said, it doesn't mean that they're not buying the same level of stuff. It's just they don't have necessarily the space to hold it. Now, with that being said as well, I'm not necessarily like Louisville. I'll invest in. I'd rather be in the outskirts. We're probably not as big a city, obviously, than a lot of them. But I think there's a lot of value in rural markets and second and third tier markets, just because they're more stable. There's less competition.
So let's talk about that, like second and third tier markets. So a lot of people don't realize, like, when you look at assets, like there's a primary market, which is like most of the cities. Like for me, it's DC. For you, it's Louisville. For Tyler, it's San Diego or LA. For Mike, it's DC, West Virginia, Baltimore. So once you get into like the second and third markets, it's, a half hour outside, 45 minutes outside, an hour outside. So it's a place where people commute from to go to the primary markets for work usually. So like right now I'm in Ocean City, Maryland. That's where I'm sitting, and it looks like a boom boom room. The market here used to be a third tier market. Like people would work here, but they would commute somewhere else for their jobs, for their W-2s and 9-to-5s. But now it's grown so much, just like Mike's, Frederick area has grown so much. It's self-sustaining. So people are actually living and working there. So as the community grows and as the area grows and the market grows, it becomes a secondary or third tier market into a primary market again. So you just got one of the things you have to look at for any of these assets, for real estate or commercial, is going to be how much growth phase is there in the area? Are they on the decline? Is there a population growth? Is the population on a decline? And you can look up stuff like that on citydata.com to find out what's going on there. Or the easiest way to do it is look at grocery stores and hotels. If grocery stores and hotels are going in, they've already done all of the legwork for these things to see, okay, they are in the growth phase. We expect this. And most cities have a 5, 10, or 20-year plan for their build outs. And you can get that. This is all public knowledge. You can also request this information from whatever jurisdiction you're in to say, okay, what's the plan of attack for this? And then you can start investing there with the plan of 5, 10, or 15 years out to see what you should expect or hope, best case scenario. But in terms of the getting loans and these things, one of the things I want to mention is that a lot of commercial loans, it doesn't affect not most of them. All of the commercial loans don't affect your DTI, as far as I know. So when you're buying these things, it doesn't affect your buying power for residential. So if I wanted to go out and buy something with a DSCR loan in a commercial realm, then it doesn't affect my buying power for a single family or a duplex or a triplex or something like that down the road. Have you had any obstacles, or what obstacles can you foresee in the future of getting approved for these things, or is it all based on the asset? Excuse me.
I mean, for me, all the banks I've talked with, they say they take a global approach to my income. So, I mean, I guess they're looking really at my debt to income. But I mean, it depends too. I started off on this pretty young on the real estate venture. I started off at 21 with my first property, and I've really kind of tried to do it with as minimal debt as possible. So, I might have had a better kind of shot at it starting off in the beginning than some guys just now getting into it. But I mean, when it actually comes to the property themselves with the debt to income, I personally, my wife and I live off my fire department income. And as long as I've been doing this for, the 4 or 5 years that we've been in business, all of the money that we've really had, with the exception of a couple of write-offs like vacations and such like that, we've put back into the business. So, I mean, I think that that's something that you need to plan for too, is to try to live off as minimum income, as you can. I mean, that's really the secret to building wealth in any way. Is live off as minimal as you can and use the money from the business to feed itself. So I mean, when you look at like my business versus my global income, I don't live off of any of that income. So I'm always going to look preferably or stronger to banks than what most banks look to maybe, or some lenders, I guess, to other people. Now, with that being said, there might be a point in the future, that I do decide to shift and live off that income, or maybe do the business full time, and potentially leave, the fire service. If that was something I would do, I kind of have like a 4X more or less. Like per se, if I bring $5,000 a month home from the firehouse, I'd have to probably make 20, more or less on the side with the business. That way, A, I can live off a portion of the income, B, there's going to be more expenses. We don't really have like a pension. We have a 401k. So luckily I get to take that with me in advance. It's something that they've put in the last about 5 or 6 years, which is a positive and negative. But healthcare benefits, I mean, you don't really kind of think about how much those cost you until you have to pay for it yourself. So, for me, I have to have enough money to grow the business, cover my income, cover my new expenses, as far as just benefits, before I would ever, kind of consider going that route. So, I mean, it's the old adage, like I said, just live on less than you make and you'll be okay. And that's just kind of the same model I use. Everything I do, I try to keep it as a simple model as possible. You can make things complicated and it can work out. But I mean, if you keep it simple, and you do business right, one of my little sayings again is make business personal. Everybody says business is not personal, but I mean, if that's the truth, that's probably because you're doing bad business. I mean, you're probably discarding people, that can help you at a later date. You should be looking to make friends with people in industry and make friends with these bankers and lenders. I mean, I think that's a big part of it is, just try to do the best by you and the best by others, and don't over leverage yourself. Even if in my case, I probably could have grown a lot quicker by leveraging more of that debt. But like I said, I look for really good deals that have a huge upside. I'm a value versus a volume.
So you and I are very similar in that situation. Is like I do 1 to 5 deals a year, and that's it, because I look for the home runs or at least the third base. And if worst case scenario shit hits the fan, I get a second base. Like I don't, for the most part, look at first base like hits, just because I'm not going to bunt the ball to get on first base because it doesn't make sense for me in the grand scheme of things. That being said, we also hustle and look a lot. So I know you do a lot of phone calls, you do a lot of emails. So the deals, I think what you own, storagesource.net?
Yeah, that's another kind of brand of the Active Income LLC we have. And more or less, it's just it's a wholesale for storage. And one of the kind of models I've always used, multiple streams of income, always try to have multiple streams of income relatively maybe in one industry. I mean, that way you're not necessarily doing different things. You're just doing different things within that industry. So one of my strategies I've always used is, we keep wholesale in our back pocket as a tool. I'm always looking to buy for myself always. I'm looking for that diamond in the rough deal. But if it's a deal that's outside my geographic area or outside of, my, I guess, ability to repair the property, due to contractors or market conditions, one of the things we always keep in our back pocket is wholesale. And, I have so many sayings. Capitalize on every opportunity. That's one of the things. I'm a religious man, and I always say, I ask God for opportunity, not to give me anything, but to put the opportunity in my path, more or less. And that's one of the things I try to do with that kind of route is, if it's something we're not going to knock down, I try to go the wholesale route, make a couple dollars, get another asset in somebody's pocket, build a relationship, and hopefully keep that money for the next property that's going to work for me.
So lead a horse to water, but can't force them to drink type deal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just bank that one for later on. You just use that one later on. So the wholesale deals you're finding. So a lot of the wholesalers, obviously, they go after specific things, would be probate or foreclosures or whatever it might be. How do you figure out who you want to go after for the wholesale deals? Are you just calling every single storage facility?
Every wholesale deal I've ever done, there's no magic sauce. No two have been the same. No two sourcing has been the same. Really the way I've done it now, I've shotgunned and looked for like off market. Everything I look for is off market. One of the big indicators for storage that I look for is just Google Maps. I mean, if it looks overgrown and there's no web presence, then there's a good chance that's a mom and pop. I mean, you're really looking for mom and pop, more or less, that they've made their money in the industry. They're just kind of running it into the ground and they're looking to sell. So, I mean, that's one of the things that, I kind of stick to with that. I tell you, the way I do it is extremely labor intensive, and it's maybe not the best way, but it seems to give me the best, return. When you pull lists, just like in wholesale for houses, everybody's working that list, so you have to form your own list of off-market sellers and off-market properties. So the way I do it is I've identified the size of a county in Kentucky that I think is a good market for me, which is usually 20,000 plus people within the size of that county. And I will go over that county on Google Maps and literally look for every storage facility within that geographic area. And then I use a service like PropStream to find the property information. So I can find out pretty quickly if it's REIT-owned or if it's, just mom and pop. And then I call them. I've underwrote probably about 30 facilities since January 1 and made probably upwards of 500 phone calls. I call on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's kind of the thing I do. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I call and follow up because anybody who's busy does not want to be called on a Monday. And if you call them on a Friday, they're just looking for the weekend. So usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can get into their mindset and give them enough days to still get something done. So, I mean, that's just my model. It's labor intensive. It's old school, but I mean, a lot of times, I mean, you guys know the things that other people aren't doing are the things that are fruitful.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier was you won't mess with an area that doesn't have the contractors. So another reason I've seen guys is not getting into it is because the cost of steel is so high right now. So with the cost of steel being so high, it outweighs the cost per square foot that you would make on the property, right? So there's a whole calculation to go about doing that. If you want to go over, you can. But on the back of the napkin, let's talk about how you find the rates per square foot or the rates for the size of the units. Like, how do you figure that out?
I mean, a lot of that too is calling around. You call other storage facilities in the area because there should be other facilities in the area. If you're the only one in the area and it's 100% full, then you've got a gold mine because, I mean, you can charge whatever you want. I mean, it's kind of how it is with that. I mean, there's industry standards in geographic areas. You could look at the largest metropolitan close to you and usually go for 75 to 80% of that as well, because I mean, the smaller cities are going to bring less. But I mean, the way I evaluate storage facilities, it's kind of rudimentary. I take whatever the income is that's brought in for say $1,000 a month, just for numbers sake. And then I take 85% of that because I always underwrite with a 15% vacancy. So then you take 85% of that, multiply it by 0.65 because I see my operating expenses usually around 35% for unmanned facilities. And then I divide it by the cap rate I want. And a lot of that depends on the market. I really don't want to touch anything less than a 7.5. To be honest, I'd love to be buying at 10s. And the one I got in Carrollton was a 10, but it's just hard to find right now. And you're looking for the upside. So that's not necessarily always a good way to evaluate it. But I mean, that's how I evaluate it, divided by the cap rate that you want. That's your initial offer, maybe be a little more conservative. And then the other thing too is just the price to build. I like to be sub $40 a square foot. With that being said, if anybody's into storage right now, they're probably going to be like, you're finding things sub $40 a square foot. Yes and no. I found my one in Carrollton that was $23 a square foot, and I just wholesaled one, or we're in the process of wrapping that one up. One in Pensacola, Florida, that was $36 a square foot. The build there is $100+ a square foot. So I mean, the deals are out there. It's just sifting through the sand
Is
like
that
anything
wood?
else.
Wood
That one's
frame?
all steel, but it's old. Now, with that being said, too, age plays into it. The framing type does play into it, because a wood frame is typically worth less just because of termites, infestation, mold, rot. I mean, your Class A assets, and it depends on what you're looking for too. If you're looking to build a giant portfolio and sell it off to a REIT, you need to be buying 20,000 square foot plus probably, and they need to be steel Class A facilities. That's what they're going to want to buy. Now, with that being said, your local investors will look for a lesser product, and they'll be okay with that. But your exit might be a little bit more difficult.
So is your goal to hold this for 3, 5, 10 years and 1031 into a bigger one? Or are you just looking to hold this indefinitely?
I mean, at the time, I tell you, my strategy changes every day. I'm no expert on any of this. I constantly am running things back and forth. I like the size of the facility I have. It makes good money. If somebody brought me a really good offer, in the next couple odd days, months, whatever, I'd seriously consider it, because, I try to do, here we go, here's another saying, less with more, or more with less, more with less. So I would love to have 3 to 5 assets that are bringing in XYZ dollars a month, and stay at 3 to 5. Once I graduate from this size of asset, buy a larger one, and then sell the lower one. I'd love to do that. A lot of people tell you never to sell. If you're going to do a 1031 and there's no taxes that are being exchanged, I think that's definitely the way to do it, because for me, it goes back to the lifestyle brand. I'm trying to make a higher amount of income that allows me to provide for my family with the minimum amount of work. I mean, firemen, yeah, we'll run out there,
Sure.
and we'll kill it whenever there's the bell to ring. But outside of that, we're doing stuff around that firehouse. We won't tell anybody we nap, but it is what it is. So, but I mean, that's the thing. I want to say it too. It's not about money for me. I really don't care about money. Everybody gets into business because they want to make money, and that could be your initial kind of thing whenever you get into it. Of course, you want to make money, but it's, to me, about
Yeah,
opportunities.
I'm not gonna lie, that was one of my goals when I got into
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, when I first got into it, but I mean, my mindset has shifted where it's more to me about options, and with that being said, it's just the option to provide for my family. My dream is not to necessarily have a number in my bank account. It's to wake up knowing that if I want to take my family to Florida and rent a beach house for a month or a week or something without them having to pay anything, I can. Or I try to get back to law guys in my department and teach them about finances and stuff like that. And that's something that I like to do without charging or giving anybody. I don't want to charge for that. My dream as I go on and I become more financially independent is the ability to give back without expecting anything, and to give to others in my family and provide to others without having to expect anything in return.
Yeah, when I was kind of joking, but we get into this for some reason, and a lot of times, like for me, it was to get money
Yep.
to be able to do stuff for my family, like that beach house trip you just talked about. As you talked about how your strategy changes every day, like you start to go a little while and you realize money is great, but it's nothing more than a tool. That's it. And that tool gives you options. So yeah, I could care less, like, hey, it's X number of dollars in your account. Like ultimately you just want to be able to have that tool to be able to utilize it whenever you want. So
I think the most powerful thing is options. Just having the option to do what you want for your family, and the option to provide, or the option to give. I mean, you need the option in life to pivot and do what you want.
And I think that's the big thing too, is when a lot of us are looking to real estate, you're searching for something that's going to be the vehicle to allow us to do what we want. And then we realize, like Mike and Aaron have mentioned, residential real estate is very time intensive. It's a whole different animal. You have tenants, you have all these things. So we look and we fantasize about doing what guys like you are doing right now, storage. Hey, this is way more passive. I can get more income and be able to accomplish my goals. And I think I know I saw your board earlier, Mike. I'm like, I know exactly what that feels like. I saw the whole list. It looks good in theory. And then you get down through that whole punch list of like 10 different rehabs. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Whereas this, it's like, hey, it's like you're graduating. You're like, okay, I can do real estate. What is the least amount of time I can spend on something to generate the greatest return that allows me, I think for most of us would say, to spend time with my family? to go do the things that I want to do. And I think residential is a great entry point. It has the lowest barrier to entry. And then as you grow and become more sophisticated, you find these other assets that provide a greater passive income without having to do as many deals. I mean, like Dillon, I think he mentioned 3 to 5 deals. I am in 100% agreement with that. If I could have 3 to 5 deals that produce positive cash flow that cover all of my daily needs and my wants, I'm in. I'm sold. I don't need to have 100 of those. I'll try for them, but I don't need to have 100 of it.
I like that. So Aaron was just on Ian Horowitz's podcast, him and Jason Bell, and they just recently interviewed a guy. I think his name was Jimmy. But he's like, if I could just do one deal a year and make $1 million, that's all I would do is just that one deal. I was like, sold. You know, I think, like I said at the beginning, everybody wants to know how many units, how many this, how many that. I would love to have like 4 rentals, make $1 million, done. I don't need to be doing 20 rehabs a quarter or some stupid. Like it's not, more is not always better.
That's the funny thing is like I know a guy, or I met a guy in North Carolina. He would buy a house for $1 million, $2 million, and he'd knock it down. And then he put up a $5 million house because he makes more in the $5 million house, the higher return than he would in a $1 or $2 million house. And I'm like, these are astronomical numbers. Like how do you even afford this? But he broke the numbers down and he was like, yeah, man, I'll make $20,000 a month versus like $5,000 a month. He's like, it's a higher return. So he does this across all these beachfronts and like Nags Head and Hilton Head and places down there on the water. It's the highest and best use for every property. Dillon, have you ever thought about building your own property once the steel prices come down?
I've been kind of back and forth, and it's something we examined probably about 3 or 4 months ago, but the market is just so up and down right now. It's hard to say. I mean, at the time we were finding deals, if that's sub $40 a square foot, and those kind of, that's what we were looking for was value add because steel had shot through the roof. But then when we started kind of going that value add route, now that the steel prices have come down, it was a point where I could buy value add for about $40 or sub $40 a square foot, and construction was $65, around that or less. But now with steel prices coming back down and the kind of traction storage has gained, most of the storage assets I'm seeing across the board are in that $55, $65, $75, depending on the area plus square foot. So I think building is definitely an option. I think it's something people should look at. If that's the case, I think it should be like you were saying with like boat and RV or something. Like just get in there and try to generate income and then add things. Maybe start with boat and RV or open parking, and then build some units. Because the issue is whenever we were looking into building, if I built 20,000 square foot right off the gate, it would take me probably 1.5 to 2 years to hit my my break-even point. And I mean, for me, it's the cash flow is king kind of thing again. I'm looking for the cash flow assets, even if it's lesser volume. Building seems like a great idea, but my capital recovery period's got to be pretty short. And that's one of the things I'm kind of looking into is a couple different ways to do that. Another great strategy I know a lot of guys do is looking for facilities that have 10,000 square foot on them, because a lot of people that are industrial players and REITs are not going to want 10,000 square foot. They want to be 30, 40 plus. But ones that have land, and then, hopefully buy it at the value of the facility that's on it, get the land, hopefully essentially for free, because you're evaluating it as a business, and then expand, and build the suit, build a unit, build 5,000 square foot, fill it up, build another one whenever you get to 70% occupancy. That's what I really love in storage, or one of the things I'm looking into is a build the suit model where we can expand as the demand's there, not build 30, 40,000 square foot and hope that it's there. Build a building, fill a building, build a building, fill a building, kind of that kind of model.
That's genius. So we're wrapping up. We've got a couple more minutes left. I want to see if Mike and Tyler have any more questions. You guys good? All right, cool. We had some information come out in this.
I was just going to say, Dillon, is there any resources if people want to learn more about self-storage besides friend requesting and Facebooking you? Is there like a podcast, a book?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
So, just to clear the air on everything, residential, I think is awesome. Get into it. I tell everybody, buy a deal. I have a lot of guys ask me, what do I need to get started in? Absolutely. Just buy something. I'm not a seminar guy. I'm a podcast guy. I'm a free guy. I like buying used books on eBay for $5. I'm that kind of guy, With that being said, I think the biggest thing you can do is get out there and try it. A lot of guys, when they ask me, hey, what should I get started? I'm all about mixed use or multiple tenant kind of stuff. I tell them, like, one of the things I'm preaching right now is mixed use commercial. Even though I'm into self-storage, it's a little bit scary, But even in your second and third tiers, buy you like a 3-story building that's got a business on the first floor and 2 floors of apartments or something like that. Test the market, get an asset that'll let you test a couple different things. With that being said, specific to self-storage, there's some really good groups out there. There's some great Facebook groups. A lot of the guys I know in the commercial space, even though it's getting hot, they're more than welcome to share the information. As far as books, I joke that I've read every book there is on self-storage. To my knowledge, there's 3. So, there's not a whole lot of content. A lot of it's kind of learning and testing the market, but there's great Facebook groups. There's a program online that has a free aspect called Storage Rebels. It's by Mike Wagner. He's real involved in storage, also more or less kind of doing these kind of smaller automated facilities versus the large REITs with retail. But he has an excellent coaching program. I personally haven't taken advantage of, but he has a network, Storage Rebels, that it's almost like a Facebook specific to storage. You can kind of get on there. It's a blog, share information, kind of like what Bigger Pockets has, but storage specific.
Yeah, Mike actually he's a mutual friend of a bunch of guys I know. They talk all the time about this stuff. So let me ask you the final question. If you can go, I know you're still a young adult, but if you can go back and teach yourself years ago, what would you teach yourself, your younger self?
I love that question. That changes every day because I'm continually learning. I don't think we ever stop learning. When you do stop learning, you become arrogant. You should always be looking at ways to better yourself with knowledge. To me, going back, if I was to do anything different, I would say get over the fear of zeros. And what I mean by that is, it's hard to raise capital, especially in the beginning, but you might be able to raise the money or find people that have the money, bring in partners. Just because something seems outside of your reach, don't assume it is. Ask yourself, how can I do this? Not why I can't do this. Ask yourself how you can do things. Don't try to look for the reasons why you can't.
That's funny. One of my favorite quotes is by Marcus Aurelius, and it says, it's anything is humanly possible as long as a human has done it before. So basically, like anything was within your grasp. So I'm like, that's the dumbed down Aaron Russell version of the quote.
Oh, definitely. And kind of the same, the same concept. They say everything's impossible until it's done. So just because somebody hasn't done something before doesn't mean that you shouldn't test it. Just test it in a safe way. Yeah. Just put yourself out there a little bit, see how it goes. Jump in with all feet if that's what you believe in. But at the same time, try to find a way to test it. Without hanging yourself out necessarily.
That's why we got this group, man. You got 1,000+ people to bounce the idea off of. So
utilize relationships, network and utilize it. Nobody learns until they do something, but try. I can't tell you how many times my dad told me never to get into real estate, and
mine's the same way.
Absolutely. You got to try something and learn for yourself, but always be on the lookout to pick up other information, or at least be aware of the resources that are out there.
All right, Dillon, we wrapping up an hour +1, +2 right now. So is there anything you want to partake or exit on? Anything you want to say on an exit?
Not really. Like I said, just get involved. Help your other firefighters out. Understand when you're going down this journey, it can be a kind of a journey that in the beginning, a lot of people won't understand. You have to believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing. Give yourself options, have a good why, ask yourself why you're trying to do this. Money is great in the beginning. That's what everybody's looking for, is to add extra money. But why do you want the money? Is it to support your family? Is it to provide for your family? Is it to give to others? Having a strong reason to do things in life and a strong vision of where you want to go. It's kind of one of those things. Set the path out before you start walking. Ask yourself, where am I trying to go with this? Don't just jump into the first. Take the opportunities that are before you, but make sure it aligns with your overall goal, because I started going down a route that, it helped me learn a lot, but it isn't the route I'm in now. And if I had just kind of tried to get in this space, in the beginning, I probably would save myself a little bit of time, given the fact I'm 25. I didn't waste that much time.
Yeah, you're still young, man. I'm looking forward to cultivating this friendship with everybody, and I'm looking forward to seeing you grow. I think you got the world is in your hands right now.
I appreciate that. And thank you guys. Resources like this are excellent, helping brothers out, and don't be afraid to talk about money, bounce ideas off each other and be a resource for each other. You might not be the most knowledgeable person in your field, but you can always give an opinion, or I underwrite assets constantly for guys. Just, hey, I get phone calls from guys in the department I've never known. Hey, this is so-and-so from Engine 6. I hear you're into real estate. Would you meet with me for coffee? Yeah, but you're buying. So,
and pick my lineup.
Yeah.
All right. Mike, got anything else, Tyler?
No, man, just thank you very much for spending a couple valuable moments of your day with us. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully somebody gets some value. I know I did. I mean, I was sitting here taking notes on a little Post-it note, like, man, that's good to know. I never even thought about that. So I appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing what you've learned in your journey over the last 5 to 6 yeyears. And thank you very much, man.
Thanks,
I
Dillon.
appreciate that. And thank you all for everything you all do. If anybody needs to reach out to me on Facebook, if I get swamped with it, it might take me a little while to get to everybody, but I'm welcome to be a resource to anybody as well. If I can help, let me know.
Hey, before we get off, Dillon, what's your wife's business name? I don't want to leave Mrs. Leonard out.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate that. So pineapplepaisley.com. Pineapple Paisley Boutique is hers. It's in Shelbyville, Kentucky.
Awesome. Guys, episode 9 with Dillon Leonard of simplystored.com. That's it. Thank you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Y'all doing?
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.